He knew he could hammer the ball when it left Russo's hand. The stripe of tape spun slowly, a lazy fastball, too lazy, floating toward him like a fat melon. He cocked the bat, then sprung forward, the bat meeting the ball, a hard thump, the ball now speeding away, rising. He began his run to first base, still watching the ball, hearing the shouts from the others. One voice, Clyde, the first baseman, "Holy mackerel! But it ain't staying fair. Too bad." He touched first, curled toward second, his eye on the ball again, a quick turn in his gut. Beside him, Clyde said, "It's going to hit your house." Biggs watched it drop, a sharp punch through the kitchen window. The others turned to him now, and Russo said, "Holy crap, you busted it to hell. Your folks home? Geez, Tommy, I ain't seen you hit one that far since high school." Biggs looked at Russo. "You never pitched me a fat one like that. I was going to kill it." Russo turned again toward the Biggs house. "You killed it. Too bad it was foul." Biggs didn't care about the game anymore, walked slowly off the field, past third base and the run-down lean-to that passed for the dugout. No one called him back, all of them silently grateful. It was him and not any one of them. He didn't turn back, couldn't hide the quiver in his voice. "I gotta make sure nobody's hurt." His eyes stayed on the jagged hole punched in the window, and he moved with measured steps, in no rush to meet the wrath that would surely come from his father. At 19, Biggs knew there would be no belt, and his father had rarely used fists on his son. But there was anger in the man's words, the deathly glare from his eyes. No matter how old Biggs might be, his father's eyes showed a brutal viciousness, punishment enough for any offense. Even before he graduated high school, Biggs had grown taller than his father, with broader shoulders, stronger arms. As he grew older, not one of his friends doubted that a 19-year-old with Biggs's athletic strength could handle any of his father's mouthy brutishness. But Biggs knew that no matter the physical difference between them, his father was always to be obeyed, or feared. His anger would often erupt for no apparent reason, a terrifying viciousness, sometimes directed at Biggs's mother, the man's sharp voice carrying through the entire neighborhood. As he grew older, Biggs finally began to understand just why his father seemed so angry. For so many of the men in the small community, the jobs had gone away. The lumber plant nearly shut down, one more casualty of the Depression. Some of those jobs had moved farther west, to another plant out in the Florida Panhandle. Men like Clarence Biggs seemed to live on hope and on pledges from the local politicians of the great efforts they were making to bring in more plants, factories, jobs for all. In every tavern, men repeated the optimism they heard from the newspaper, that the town would survive, even prosper, that Florida's celebrated boom of the 1920s would return, and with that, opportunity for all. But in this neighborhood of ragged homes with clapboard walls, of vacant fields of sand and sand spurs, there was very little to be hopeful about. No matter what the men in the fancy suits promised them, Clarence Biggs had stopped paying attention to what Palatka was trying to be. What was here, now, were broken men. They knew what poor was, their pride as empty as their hope. Like most of them, Clarence had settled for work where he could find it. Every day he spent long hours at a seafood plant near the St. Johns River. There was nothing elegant about scaling and gutting fish, the pay not enough to buy the fish he cleaned, and the stench he carried home on his clothes reminded them all that Clarence was too weary and too defeated to be embarrassed.